Okay, welcome. This is a special early edition of the Anderson Report. It is Tuesday, September 29th. We're doing this edition a little early, even though I know that the first round of the presidential debates are not until 9 p.m. My expectations are that a lot of people are going to want to watch all of the, let's call it, pre-game hoopla and setup before the debates start. And frankly, it worked out very well. Today was not a terribly eventful day in the market, but we're going to go over it. We're going to recap some economic data that will be coming at us the remainder of the week. We'll go for about 30 minutes here. And then if people want to indulge themselves in 3 hours of repetitive pre-debate commentary, knock yourselves out. So, stocks did a reasonably good job of holding most of their gains from Monday. We did end a little bit lower on the major market averages. The Dow, S&P down 0.5%. That's a little bit less than a third of what they gained yesterday. And the NASDAQ only down 0.3% after gaining 1.9% yesterday. So the Dow, John, thank you for joining us. One of our more loyal and reliable watchers. And of course, Mark Johnson. It's always a pleasure to have you in the chat, Mark. So the Dow lost 130 points. It closed at 27,452, a little bit below the 50-day moving average after closing a little bit above it yesterday. That average is at 27,561. So it's about 110 points below the 50-day moving average. The S&P 500 lost 16 points. Also, that leaves it at 33.35. That's about 20 points below its 50-day moving average. It closed about 3 or 4 points below it yesterday. And the NASDAQ Composite closed at 11,085. That remains above its 50-day moving average by about 40 points. That averages at 11,043. The NASDAQ went out at 11,085, loss of 33 points or 0.3%. And the Russell 2000, which gained 2.5% yesterday, lost about half of that, lost just really, let's say, not even 25% of that today. It was down 0.4%. The Russell declined 5 points. It went out at 1504, just below 1505. The 50-day moving average is at 1531. I view it kind of a positive sign for the broad market that the Russell 2000, after gaining 2.4% yesterday, only retraced less than 0.5% of that today. So really, an impressive start to the week for the Russell 2000. Now, I should mention also that the transports were really the weakest sector. The airlines were down quite a bit today. I'm not really sure why, but the transports were down 140 points. They closed at 11,300. That's a decline of 1.2% after gaining about 1.4% yesterday. I'm a little bit concerned about that, but let's see if that trend follows through into next week. The transports have been a tremendous story this quarter. Even with the decline today, they are up 23.5% quarter to date. And my best guess would be this is a little bit of profit taking, given that they have outperformed so strongly in the third quarter with 1 day to go. I'm not gonna be terribly worried about the transports being down so much more than the other averages on a percentage basis, but I think we should watch it closely the first few days of the fourth quarter, which will be Thursday, Friday, and then early next week. Um, so yesterday we had a very, very strong day in terms of market breadth, where advancing issues led decliners by better than 5 to 1 at the New York Stock Exchange. Today at the NYSE, decliners led advancers by a little bit less than 2 to 1. There were 1,900 decliners, there were 1,100 advancing issues. That's not bad after the gains that we had yesterday in terms of market breadth. Nasdaq actually fared even a little bit better than that. Uh, they were just slightly negative in terms of their advanced decline line. I mean, by less than 100 issues. I would call it even on the day, frankly. And that certainly is consistent with the NASDAQ composite only losing 0.3% um, on the day after gaining almost 2% yesterday. So, yes, Mark, thank you. I am 2 subscribers away from the 100 subscriber milestone. So, if you are a new watcher tonight, or if you know people that might be interested in the program, please encourage them to hit the subscriber bar on YouTube and then hit that little bell that's right next to the subscriber bar. It's the red subscriber bar. It says subscribe just below the video, kind of on the right hand side. And then right next to that, there's a little bell kind of with a little echo to it, as if the bell's ringing. Hit that bell, and you will get notifications of when the next broadcast will be. And typically we broadcast at 7 p.m. once in a while, 9 p.m. Like to give people a chance to get home from work. And I know that no time is a perfect time for everyone. And again, we're doing this show early tonight because I just get the impression a lot of people are really going to want to totally immerse themselves in all of the pregame festivities before the debate tonight at 9 o'clock. Again, this is the Anderson Report. That is my YouTube channel. So if you haven't subscribed yet, or you know people that you think would like the show, encourage them to subscribe. And I also broadcast on Periscope at TJ Anderson 12. My Twitter handle is TJ Anderson 1. And one other piece of very exciting news. After months and months and months of being back ordered and out of stock, the Brio Logitech webcam finally became available a couple of weeks ago, and it arrived at the doorstep here a few hours ago. Not really in enough time for me comfortably to get it all set up for tonight's broadcast. But tomorrow and going forward, we will have that Brio webcam plugged in. And not that the video with the camera we've been using is fuzzy or late or that really bad, but we'll have a much sharper view tomorrow night, and then we'll work on incorporating some of the charts that I verbally try to describe on occasion into the broadcast. So there's 1 day left in the quarter. We did have a one piece of very positive economic data today, really. The Conference Board Consumer Confidence number came out for September at 101.8, significantly above consensus, which was 88 to 90, and significantly higher than the prior reading, which was the August reading of 86 and change. So that's a very positive sign. We'll get the second look at the University of Michigan conference consumer confidence number later in the week. The conference board puts out their consumer confidence number once a month. It's calibrated a little bit higher than the University of Michigan number. Not that it's a stronger number or a weaker number. It just has a slightly different scale to it. The University of Michigan puts out a number early in the month, and then they revise it when they get more data in and more surveys back later in the month. And I think actually what we'll get from the University of Michigan will be um, their first look at October. So, couple of other mentions for today. Energy. The energy sector just can't get out of its way. It was one of the better performing sectors yesterday. It had a terrible week last week. It was down 8%. It gained 2.2% yesterday. It was down 2.7% today. It is just an avoid for right now until we can get some um, uh, po- until we can get some better, more positive action in the energy sector of the S&P 500. Excuse me. Uh, Crude oil certainly did not help the energy sector today. It was down $1.40. It went out at $39.25. That's down a little over 3%. Again, we like to see crude oil a little bit above 40. That I think is really a global supply and demand issue, and we will get oil inventory numbers tomorrow. They come out at about 10:30 in the morning. Um, we've mentioned the housing sector numerous times. It's just been very, very strong. And one indication of the demand for building materials is that copper is within a few hundredths of a cent of being um, at $3. It went out at $2.99 per pound. Um, so copper, if it when the housing market is really smoking and has been smoking for a while, copper can trade into north of 3.5. When we were at the lows in March during the abyss of the coronavirus sell-off, I think copper traded $1.80, $1.85. It's now within a few thousandths of a penny of being at $3. So that's another, as if we don't need another positive data point for the housing sector. Copper acts really well. So just a couple of other mentions. The 10-year yield holds in 0.66%, even with the sell off, even with the really sharp sell off we had a week ago Wednesday, and some of the really ugly days that we had during September. After I must have Bernanke, after Chairman Powell gave his Jackson Hole speech in the last week in August, the 10-year yield has held up very well. I do not believe it has broken the 0.6% yield threshold. It's got up to 0.72, 73, 74 a couple times. It's maybe traded as low as 0.62. It went out today as 0.66. I would love to see that get up above 7, and stay up there. I think the banks would like that. We know that short rates are going to stay very, very low for a long time. Um, a steeper yield curve would certainly be a positive sign for the banks, and the financials are another sector that have struggled, not to the extent the last week or so that energy has, but we mentioned energy down 2.7%, financials down 1.1%, industrials and materials down about 0.8%. They both acted very well yesterday, gave back a little bit today. And since we mentioned financials, we see a lot of stuff in the banks about the banks are real, the big banks. Let's say the big money center banks, even those in New York City, are really encouraging and talking as if they're going to start promoting aggressively getting their employees back into the office working on site. I think that would be very positive for the economy overall. Clearly, there are capacity constraints, certainly in New York City, with de Blasio just in a state of being terminally lost in how to what to do about the virus. Even the principals union in New York City has now filed an injunction for the entire New York City school system to be turned over to Governor Cuomo. They are absolutely infuriated with De Blasio, who is just he's the mayor of New York City, just seems to be completely lost as to um, what to do and in terms of getting some normalcy back into the school environment, as well as capacity constraints among any indoor businesses, restaurants, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Clearly, as other states are ramping up, increasing their capacity constrictions, going from 25 to 50% or from 50 to 75%, even Florida going to 100%, that's just going to put more and more pressure on um, the big blue states in the Northeast to follow suit. And hopefully the schools will find some way to either get de Blasio to allow a more normalized education system in New York City or to have the whole thing turned over to the governor. But the banks are really encouraging employees to prepare for mentally the idea that they're going to be going back to their central workplace and informing their superiors and the departments they work for some reason why they are not comfortable doing that. So that's a positive. I think that's a positive comment on the economy going forward. I think that little snippets like that and little things like airline travel numbers continue to increase, are are have quietly added into this consumer confidence increasing and significantly beating expectations like we saw today. Um, Now, there's one other thing that I want to get into, and that was there was some chatter in the chat either yesterday or on Sunday evening about the Atlanta Fed, and really specifically about the group called the Atlanta Fed GDP Now. Um, it's not really forecasting, and they are specific that it's not forecasting, but their GDP tracking model. There's one day left in Q3. There will be numerous reports come out. The first still in October, much more so the first half of October than the tail end of October, that will feed into what the final GDP for Q3 will be. Clearly, as we get into the first couple of weeks, we'll get retail sales numbers for September. We'll get the September jobs report on Friday. We'll get a number of other economic reports for September during the first couple of weeks of October. Those will all feed into the calculation for third quarter GDP. And what the Atlanta Fed GDP Now tracking service does, it's not forecasting. It's not like a forecasting like economists would project a forecast based on surveys or estimates. The Atlanta Fed GDP now tracking model, and it's affiliated with the Atlanta Fed, but it's not a service, it's not a forecasting tool of the Atlanta Fed. But their model specifically says they are not an official forecast of the Atlanta Federal Reserve, but a running estimate of real GDP growth based on actual economic data that has been released for the currently measured economic quarter. So they are taking the third quarter, obviously, is July, August, September. They are taking the jobs numbers for July. They are taking the ISM reports for July and August, the jobs numbers for July and August, the factory orders numbers that have been reported for July and August. They are taking retail sales numbers that have been reported for July and August. They are taking the productivity reports that are out for the quarter. And they are taking all the actual data. Some of the data is done by surveys, but it certainly gets revised, uh, uh, later in the month and the following months, and it becomes what we call hard data. They are taking what they consider to be the hard data and or very reliable surveys and putting it into a model and telling you what their tracking estimate is. I'm not going to call it a forecast because they don't, for the third quarter. And although there's only one day left in the third quarter, we'll have numerous reports that still feed into that model. And right now, they are at plus 32% for the third quarter. That would be a very, very positive number for third quarter GDP. Now, tomorrow, we're going to get the final version, the final report on Q2 GDP. It currently stands at minus 31.7% for the second quarter, April, May, June. Okay, we were down 5% in the first quarter, all because of an extremely sharp decline the last 3 weeks in March. So, we were at minus 5% for the first quarter. We're currently set at minus 31.7% for the second quarter. We're going to get the final read on second quarter GDP tomorrow at 8:30. I'll have a couple comments on that on Twitter after it comes out. And the Atlanta Fed's forecasting plus 32% at for the third quarter. Now, if we got that 32%, if we had a decline of 31.7% for the second quarter, and we did increase by 32% for the third quarter, that will not get us back to where we were at going into the second quarter, even though the increase looks the same as what the decline was, because we're increasing off a much smaller base. So the way the math works, it doesn't get you all the way back to that same number. We're going to need still a good shot to the positive in the fourth quarter if we want to have a shot at getting GDP even or close to even for fiscal year 2020. But believe me, if we get plus 32% for the third quarter, and we'll get that the last week in October, literally days before the election, the Trump economic team will be very, very happy. Now, a couple of other comments. I did see after the close that Regeneron halted their stock on positive test results, preliminary positive test results on some of their stage 3 trials. I don't have any details on it. I would really like to know exactly, what some of the experts have to say about that. But I'm sure that will get headline. And if there will be any headlines in addition to the debate later tonight, tomorrow morning, it will probably be on what Regeneron has said about their trials. So, just to go over what economic data that we're looking at for the remainder of the week, we're going to get the ADP employment report tomorrow at I think it comes out at 8:15. For September, we're looking at consensus of plus 600,000 jobs. That number has been much weaker than the BLS number, Bureau of Labor Statistics number that it gives us the jobs data every month. I'm not sure exactly why, but it'll be that number. People's expectations each of the last 2 months have been tapped down between when the ADP number comes out on Wednesday and then when the jobs number comes out on Friday. And then the jobs number has been pretty strong. So we'll see if maybe we get a beat on consensus from the ADP number tomorrow. Consensus is for plus 600,000. We'll get the third quarter final GDP for the second quarter. I don't really see anybody moving off where it currently is at 31.7. Look, it could move a point in either direction, and it's still a whopping decline of at least 30%. We're also going to get the Chicago PMI number. That's a purchasing managers index. Consensus is for 53. The expectations, actually, the prior report was 51.2. So if we get that Chicago number at 53, I think that'll be a positive sign. That would be 2 months in a row above the expansion contraction threshold of 50. That number at the lows was below 40, and I think it was below 50 for 5 or 6 months. And also, we get one big IPO. I think it's going to be priced tomorrow night for trading on Thursday. Palantir. That's that data management company that Peter Thiel is really the driving force in. There's a couple of other there's a couple other people that are very well known inside the circle of venture capital people and technology entrepreneurs. I'm not that familiar with them, but Peter Thiel is a very, very well known guy. He was one of the co-founders of PayPal many years ago. This is not your typical unicorn that only came into existence 2 years ago. The company's been around for 12 to 15 years. They have massive government contracts. They also have massive other data management contracts. A little bit of controversy about them because so much of their revenue is connected to government business. But this IPO is going to get a lot of attention. Thursday, we're going to get personal income and spending. We'll get PCE prices, a lot of potential information on inflation. There won't be any. And then we'll also get the weekly jobless claims numbers, and we'll get the ISM manufacturing survey, which is kind of the national version of the Chicago Purchasing Managers Report. That report will get a lot of attention also. And then Friday, we get the September jobs data. Expectations are for a plus 800,000. The prior month, we were at plus 1.35 million. So, look, it's almost 6 o'clock. I wanted to do this for inside of 30 minutes in case anybody wants to watch any of the nightly news shows that come on at 6 o'clock. I'm sure you'll hear what they say repeated nonstop for about 3 hours until the debates start. But I thought that today's market action, even though it was down a little bit, was okay. So, almost somewhat constructive. We had a big up day yesterday. We gave back a little bit of it today. Advanced declines, not bad. Down 2-1 after being up over 5-1 on Monday. And whether or not a lot of potential wild card events maybe from this debate tonight. Will it affect market activity tomorrow? Just hard to tell. It's it's both sides will spin. Regardless of what happens, both sides will claim they won the debate. That's probably the only certainty involved. And then we're uh, one day left in the quarter, and then we'll go into the fourth quarter. So that's about it for me. I certainly appreciate everybody watching the show and participating in the chat. Any questions you have, feel free to shoot them to me at Twitter anytime. It's TJ Anderson1. This is my YouTube channel, The Anderson Report. If you haven't subscribed, please subscribe and hit that little bell next to it. I'm 2 subscribers away from 100. That would be a nice metric to hit before the end of the week. So if you know people that you think might be interested in the show, please pass it along. I try to do this in 30 to 40 minutes to not take up too much of everybody's time. And if you miss it live, you can always see it on the replay. So thank you very much. Have a great evening. Enjoy the debates, and we will talk with everyone again tomorrow evening.